you can't be overly perfectionistic about every song, because now in my mind I just see like songs I put out years ago as like moments in time that like capture who I was then, and like it's okay. It doesn't have to be exactly representative of who I am right now. Like it's just not realistic.
She's a singer, songwriter, and model from Tampa, Florida. She started writing music at 6 years old. You may know her from her songs The Scientist or No Words. Please welcome Savanna Leigh to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Hi, how are you? I'm doing good.
I'm great. It's great to have you on, and I'm really excited to have this talk with you.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be here. I just woke up, so I'm ready for questions. I should not be waking up this late, but I am home for a little bit for the summer, and so whenever I come back to Florida, I just try to relax as much as I can.
We all need that time off. We all have days that we get up at and get up later in the day.
Exactly.
So just kind of first question, what was your first experience with music like, or what made you first get into music?
Yeah, well, when I was growing up, my grandma owned a like theater production company in like Georgia, and my dad was also a country artist from when I was born till when I was about like 7, and he like went back and forth from Florida and Nashville, so it was kind of something I was around honestly my whole life. And then my sister is 2 years older than me, and she picked up singing when she turned like 2 or 4, so I was just kind of always listening to people around me doing music. And I think my first like real experience with it was probably the theater company. I did like little shows with my grandma and her company, and I was singing and performing, and we even did like studio recording sessions for some of her like I guess theater stuff. She would have like CDs made for people to listen to, like with the tracks done for like the shows and things like that. So it was kind of just something I was introduced to from like literally from as long as I can remember.
Yeah, and so I was trying to like get to know more about you, read up on you, and I heard that when you were younger, you kind of started a duo act with your sister. What was that kind of like, and what did you learn? Like, is there anything you learned from that you took into your career?
Yeah, we kind of always sung together because me and her, especially when I was younger, I was like a lower singer. Like my voice just sat more in like that lower register, and she was like a higher register, so it kind of just naturally made sense for us to like sing together. And so yeah, our whole lives we did that. And then when I was 16, she moved to Nashville for school, so we started taking it more seriously then in like a professional setting, I would say. It was kind of always like our plan originally, and we were doing like country pop in Nashville for like 2 years. And I was doing it from Florida, and then I moved up there and did it for a year once I went to Lipscomb, which was the school of music that we both chose. She graduated from that school. I ended up leaving my sophomore year. So all around that time, I would say, is when I feel like I learned the most lessons, probably just because COVID happened, and her and I were kind of realizing we had like different career goals, and like we loved singing together, but like ultimately if we didn't have the same like end goal, we weren't going to be able to do it forever. So I think I just took a lot of just like the back end stuff with me from that duo, because she was a lot more of the creative in that setting. She wrote a lot of our songs, and she handled a lot of like the music like parts of our act, and I did a lot of like the social media and the emailing and like all the back end stuff. So I took that in with me to like whenever I went out on my own and did a solo career, which is what I've been doing for 2.5 years now. That was kind of like what I took with me, and then I started just picking up more into the creative side of things that I'd kind of let go of for a long time, and then yeah, that's kind of how I ended up starting my own stuff.
And so leaving college your sophomore year, you dropped out of school completely. So
yeah.
Like, how supportive were your parents of that? Did they kind of understand it, like that this music thing was something that you really wanted to do? All that.
Yeah, I mean, my whole life, my parents knew that my sister and I wanted to do music. I told them that from a really young age, and my dad never went to college, so he kind of already knew that that was a potential option. But my mom was super big on education, and like I am as well, so I didn't really want to leave originally. I was something I wasn't considering at all. And then around the end of my freshman year, going into my sophomore year, I felt like I was almost kind of being like held back from just being able to go out into Nashville and like learn the scene and meet people and collaborate and release music, because I had just so much going on in school, and like our program was pretty grueling, but it felt like some of the things we were learning weren't anything of like use to me in the future for like what I wanted to do. It was a lot more of like the classical side of things, and like it was a contemporary program, so they did have a lot of stuff geared toward people who weren't doing like classical music, like people who were doing pop, R&B, country. But I wasn't able to have the freedom that I wanted, and I just still stayed. And then when COVID happened, kind of everything shifted online, as everyone knows, and I was just like, I'm paying for like a private education for like online classes when I could like save up the year in Florida, which is where I was during all of COVID, write songs, and then get back to Nashville and like take a gap year and basically just see what I can do in a year, work on my socials, because I had like all the time in the world, and I just wanted to see like, I didn't want to look back and be like, oh, I regret not leaving school. Like, what if I had left? So I basically didn't go back for a year. And my mom and I had this deal that like, if in a year it was like obvious I should go back because I hadn't done anything, then like I would. But she was the one that was actually originally making the idea of like leaving, which I wasn't expecting. So yeah, they were both supportive of me leaving, and then we just didn't think I'd like fully leave. And then when the year came back around, it just didn't really make sense anymore, and things were still weird with COVID, and like singing lessons were still online, so it just didn't make sense, I guess, anymore for me. But yeah, they were supportive of it.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of a common feeling people have. Like, they kind of want to get their career started earlier, like as soon as they can. Whereas, like with college or school in general, even if you drop out now, like later in life, if you really wanted to, you could go back and finish that education.
Exactly.
For whatever
Right.
reason.
Exactly.
So, like, when you were growing up, did you kind of, being surrounded by music, was it known that you wanted to do music, or was there anything else you wanted to do in life? Like, all those kids have those other dreams of like fire,
Yeah.
or like all these things. Did you have anything else other than music that you were thinking about?
I've always been like one of those kids that is like too old for my age, in the sense that I just like was very, I've been like career oriented, I feel like, since I was like really young. And I've almost put that before like everything else. I never really had any other dreams. I'm like interested in a lot of stuff. Like I'm one of those people who like likes to pick up different things, and I like to be good at a lot of things and try to like learn about new things all the time. Like I grew up doing sports. I was like in high school, I was like captain of my team, and I loved being like an athlete. And then I did like CrossFit for a while. Like I picked up a lot of like athletic type things, but never anything that I would have put before my music. Yeah, I've always been like pretty one track minded. Even as a kid, I just kind of was like, this is what I want to do, and then like I zero in, and I don't really get distracted easily by other things.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did want to on the side do modeling in Nashville. That's how that kind of came about, because it's something I've always kind of been interested in. But it was probably because it's a creative outlet, just like music, and it kind of like coincides with one another, and you can use what you learn in modeling for your music career as well. So I feel like that's why I was interested in it. So it always kind of comes back to music, but I do have things that I'm like, I like doing besides music. I just wouldn't pursue them professionally, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. So, like, what are kind of some of those things that you learned in modeling that you also use in your music career?
Yeah, I just think getting comfortable in front of a camera is really important. I'm not very comfortable in front of a camera if someone else is recording or taking pictures of me. It's always been like, if I'm the one holding the camera, like on a vlog of some sorts, like that's like more comfortable, obviously. But I think modeling just helped me get out of my comfort zone, and like you wear different clothes that you wouldn't normally wear. You meet people, you're kind of thrown into like a setting where you have to just like be yourself in front of a group of random people, random photographers. You have to learn how to just like be fast on the scene and like learn quickly, because I feel like I kind of just went into modeling with no modeling experience professionally. I always was like into social media and like taking photos, but I didn't like do it for money ever. So it was just like a new thing for me. It was a new world. Just I learned a lot about makeup and hair, because like I would, whenever you're sitting in the chair like getting ready for the shoot, you're just like talking to these makeup artists and people like that for like hours while they're doing your stuff. And so you just like learn a bunch of tips on that end. I did a few music videos that I was in where I was like an extra, or I was having to act, which makes me uncomfortable to act because I'm not an actress. But it's part of the job, so I figured it out. And just like in music videos for your own stuff, you kind of are acting. It's just a little less uncomfortable because it's like your song and your story,
Yeah.
but you're still acting in some way.
Yeah.
So yeah, just things like that. It was nice to just kind of be in that world and not have to worry about like the singing aspect, but more of like the on camera
Yeah.
aspect.
And at least if it's like your music video or something you're doing, you kind of have a creative set. You can change things as you want. You're not kind of like stuck to whatever the project is. You can change things as you go along.
Exactly.
But so whether it's getting out of your comfort zone or anything else, what tips or like advice would you give to people just starting their music career trying to pursue music and get out there?
Yeah, I think for me, advice that I always try to give is just like don't allow yourself to worry too much about like what other people are doing in music. I feel like right now there's just so much going on and there's so much changing, and like even since I started when I was 16, I'm 22. There's so much changing always, and like the music industry is just a lot different now with social media. Like it was always a part of your career, but I feel like now it's like detrimental to it. And so it's like it's really easy to get like imposter syndrome and like compare yourself to other people and just like have so many outside voices coming in at one time. I guess I'm like a big advocate for doing things on your own first before bringing in other people to
Yeah.
help you like shape your career. I think for me, I didn't have a manager for like 2.5 years. I didn't really have anyone telling me anything. I was like fully in control of my music. And so because I didn't have people like pushing me into any direction, I had to figure out like what do I want? What do I want to say? What do I want to research? And I got to learn like a lot more about music and like the industry because I was doing so much research trying to figure it out so that I was my own manager, my own publicist, my own
Yeah.
everything. And I think when you wear a lot of hats, it can be stressful, but also you do have a really good sense of like what you should want from somebody when they do step into the picture. I feel like now the manager that I have, I was like looking for someone like her for years, and it was just meeting people, and it was never working out. And I think if I had not been my own manager for so long, I wouldn't have known what to expect or like known what I was looking for.
Yeah.
And a lot of people just like starting out just like want a bunch of people to come in and like speak into their career because they're like stressed about like the initial start. So I guess just starting is just like the main thing, just going for it and like not listening to other people, because a lot of people don't really respect music and artists until they've made
Yeah.
something or done something that gives them like a respectable thing, and then all of a sudden everyone's like supportive of it. So at first it's really hard when everyone's like, music, like you're never going to make money, you're never going to be able to do that like for a career. And I think that's just like a hard thing to swallow, especially if you're like a person that cares what other people think of you. I'm not one of those people personally that like really cares about outside voices, but I do care a lot about like what my personal like family thinks of me and my closest friends care. So I don't know. I think it's just something about finding supportive people, just like going for it and like doing everything you can on your own first and just figuring out the industry. Because if you're really like into music and you love music, like the other aspects of it aren't awesome to learn about. Like it sucks to have to sit there and
Yeah.
like research TikTok and all these things, and research publicists and why you shouldn't hire one so early and just like all these things. But it's beneficial to you in the end because then you're the one that has the knowledge, and then when people do want to come and step in and be a part of your team, like you know what you deserve and like what you want. So I
Yeah.
feel like that's the main thing, is just like going for it and not allowing other people to speak into your career too early, probably.
Yeah. And you mentioned that you thought socials in some aspect could be detrimental, causing imposter syndrome and all this. What do you think are like? Do you see any positives or like helpful sides of social media for artists nowadays? Because it's obviously becoming such a more used tool by artists. Like all these smaller artists and bands are now getting their start, getting their music out there, getting headline tours purely based on their social presence. And so, what kind of do you think about that side of the music industry?
I think that TikTok I love and hate it. I think it's really beneficial in the sense that it's like basically a free marketing tool, and there's just so much growth that can occur on that app more than any other app I've ever been a part of. And I've been doing social media since like middle school because I'm just weird, and I had like an Instagram in like middle school. And it's like, I don't know. So I think that there's just so much about it that is easy access right now that we as artists should take advantage of. I think making content is annoying, I would say, after a while, especially for like how much you're posting. It's like 3 times a day, every day. But I think if you just like kind of dedicate a few days of your week to like making a bunch of videos, which is like kind of how I do it, I think it takes the pressure off. And you just kind of have things set up for the week. I think, I've grown so much on social media alone. And like during the year of COVID, when I didn't have anything to do and I was leaving school, I just sat here and I worked on making videos. And originally it was just like lifestyle videos because I didn't even think at the time that TikTok was an app for musicians. Like all I saw were like dancing trends and like people talking. And so that's like how I started. And then I started posting music on a separate account. So now I have like 3 accounts, but music's the only one I actually post on. And it's just grown exponentially in the sense of like, real listeners, real people. My target audience is completely on TikTok, whereas on Instagram, my target audience is super off because of how I built my Instagram originally, and then I tried transferring over to a musician's page, which I'm still doing, but it's a whole different growth setting rather than TikTok. It's just so quick, and Instagram is like a long game type of thing, and you lose a lot of followers when you start posting what you really care about and like what you really want to do. You lose those people who are only following you for whatever reason it originally started as. So I don't know, social media can be really hard to navigate, and I think there's just so much about it that changes literally every day, so you have to just be keeping up with it. I am always like on YouTube researching like current things, algorithms, like things that people are noticing in the back end with like reels, because that's such a big thing now too. Just like how to transfer over my Instagram to more of a video platform, even though it's supposed to be a picture platform. I think it's transferring quickly and everyone can tell, and so it's just like taking advantage of it. I think social media is hard. And if you're on it too much and you sit there and you're like over analyzing everyone's pictures and videos, you can start to like freak yourself out and think that you're not good and you're not doing enough, and then, like, look at this person, and that's when it starts to, I feel like, get unhealthy. I've been there, or like when I've posted a song and it hasn't performed well, and I'm like, I'm not releasing the song, no one likes it. Like basing the greatness of like your art off of like a 7-second algorithm, like it doesn't really make sense, but it's easy to do. So yeah, I don't know. I've just had to repurpose my content and just be like, here's this video I posted 3 days ago. It didn't work. Let me post it again at a different time. And like, then it'll do super good. So it has really nothing to do with like your music being terrible or not terrible. It's just like, you have to post it at a good time. You have to have the right traction and like the right captions, and it just all comes into play. And obviously good music, but sometimes, you know, videos do well that you're like, why did that video blow up? Like, you never know. It's just social media crazy. So you just have to be, I don't know, not put too much emphasis on like that being the driving factor in your career, because it is a huge part of it, but also like you're also trying to gain like long lasting genuine fans that will show up to your shows, not just like your videos, you know, and that takes a whole nother aspect of marketing. And that's when like the team is super useful, and having a manager and people that can like help you with that, because that's a whole nother aspect to it. There's so many people that have like a lot of followers, but like they don't translate when it comes to streams or their shows. So yeah,
it doesn't translate to like real life, like tangible fans. But then also the thing is, TikTok is more like to get discovered, and it's like almost guaranteed engagement, whereas Instagram is more kind of if someone already knows you or like has already been a fan of you. So you see these artists that have like hundreds of thousands of followers on TikTok, and you click that button to go to their Instagram, and it's at like 2,000 or something, and there's like clearly a drop off there.
Exactly.
Instagram is kind of more for like the fans who will go to shows and will listen to the music rather than just see a TikTok of yours every now and then and like it.
Totally.
And so when you kind of once the pandemic kind of came and kind of had everyone questioning things, was there ever a question as to like what you would do with your music career, or like if you would go back to school and take a pause on music every now, like was there ever anything that, pandemic or otherwise, that made you want like think about stopping music?
I think, well, when COVID happened, it was around the time that my duo and I we split off from each other in like professional settings. So the first question was just like, what does my music look like without her? Because like I said, she was the creative aspect of a lot of our stuff, and a lot of that came from just like the little sister thing. Like she was older than me, and I'd always like kind of grown up behind her, and so I felt like I wanted us to both have something we could bring to the duo, which is, I was like, if she's naturally the writer and the musician, that in that way, I want to bring something else to the table. So that's why I got super into like the back end stuff and the marketing and the other side of the business. But I think that like the idea of being a creative person and like writing my own songs, I kind of talked myself out of for a long time. I was like very insecure in the sense of like, she was my older sister and she was really good at music and writing. So I was like, oh, well, if she's doing that, like I can't do that too. And so I kind of like shut myself off from writing for a long time, even though I'd been doing it since I was a kid. I don't know, I've always been one of those people who's like almost a little bit too hyper independent. So I was like, well, I want to do my own thing and not share this with you. But in reality, like writing music is one of the most important parts of being an artist. So yeah, when we split off, I had to figure out like what does my music sound like? Can I even write a song after a few years? I haven't written one in a long time. Besides from school, like in my program I was in for those first 2 years, we did write songs, and that's what first sparked my like love for music again in my own way. Was like we were in songwriting class and I had to make songs, and I was like, this is terrible, like I'm scared. And one of my first songs, which I released as no words, is I wrote that in school. Like I wrote that for a project. So literally I just ended up like actually liking the song and got it recorded, but it was originally just for a school assignment. So yeah, I think I just was like, this is the type of music I've already made for school. Now I need to figure out like what I'm doing. And I kind of just had like a huge like sit down with myself moment during COVID, because I was just starting fresh from a new blank page. And yeah, I was never questioning, do I want to continue to do music? It was more of just like, how can I do it now without my sister? And I think that was the biggest growing point in my life, because like I've never been a person that quits ever anything, even when like I probably should quit something because it's like hurting my body. Like for example, high school and basketball, like I just pushed myself to the end, even though I probably should have maybe left the team like my senior year when I had so much music going on that I was like doing both at the same time and I was not doing good. I was like, I'm not quitting, it's my senior year, you know what I mean? So I'm just like not that person that lets go of something I believe in ever. So I really fought for music, and I always have, and that, especially that year, I just went full-fledged. Like, I started booking shows. I had no music, so I was playing, like, 2 of my own songs and then just, like, a bunch of covers. In Nashville, I was just like, I'm going to play shows out. I'm going to start writing. I started messaging people from my school that I had written with during classes, people that were older than me, reaching out to people on Instagram. I was like, let's write. Like, I just kind of like went crazy because I'm like, I was super hyper focused, and then I was stressed that I was behind, and I was like, oh my gosh, 2 years of my life in Nashville was in a duo that I just spent on something that didn't end up going through. So like, what can I do now? And I was just freaking out, but me freaking out ended up being good because then it opened a lot of doors, and I was just like basically trying to make up for the past 2 years. So I made up for 2 years in like 6 months. So I was just going after things and making calls, and yeah, I think it just kind of was a point where I was questioning everything, and I think I needed to figure out what I want to do. And why I want to do music by myself, and like what's the purpose of my career, and it was just like a whole thing. But I definitely, yeah, I questioned a lot of stuff that year. I still question all the time, like, what I'm doing, because it's just such a weird industry. But I'm a lot more sure of myself now, and a lot more sure of my music, and, like, what I stand for, my team, and, like, who's around me, and, like, my goals. I have all that really aligned. But I didn't for a long time. And, yeah, it was a rough time, for sure.
Are you a music artist trying to find a way to get your music on as many streaming platforms as possible? Then check out DistroKid. DistroKid is a super user-friendly and super easy-to-use service that will make your music available in stores like Spotify, Apple Music, iTunes, Amazon Music, YouTube, Snapchat, everything. Everything you could imagine, it's available. People will even be able to add your songs into their Instagram stories. DistroKid helps you with the distribution, monetization, and promotion of all of your music. Use the link in the description of this video for 7% off any DistroKid package you want. Pick from musician packages designed to help artists get their own music out there, or even get a label package where you can manage up to 100 artists from one profile. So that's more for like managers, labels, and you can also get the musician package that I mentioned earlier, which is more for artists, producers, things like that. It's super easy, and you can get 7% off any package right now with the link in the description of this video. So once again, if you're looking for a way to get your music on as many streaming platforms as possible. I'm talking any platform you can think of. Get DistroKid and get 7% off right now with the link in the description. Back to the program.
But like you mentioned, just like getting up on stages, even to perform covers, just getting up to perform to get your name out there. What was kind of your first live performance or live show like? What was that experience like to just for the first time actually sing to an audience?
Yeah, right when we stopped singing together, I had an ensemble performance actually the next day for school. So that wasn't like my own show. Basically, it was more so for my program I was in. All year, they would put all the students of my class, each class, into different groups, and so then at the end of the year, we'd have like a big performance with your group. So we started at the beginning of the semester, and we just like learn a bunch of songs, and we play them as like a band, and like the singer majors, me and like a bunch of others would sing. Then there's like guitarists that were there on like that type of scholarships, so stuff like that. We'd all get together and like play these songs at the end of the year, and so my ensemble was like that next day, and so that was my first time like performing on stage, knowing that I was gonna be like a solo artist, even though I had like a band behind me and like my school was there and all that kind of stuff. It still felt different because I knew like up there, everyone at my school had known me as like half of Lexana, which was our duo name. So like no one really knew me as like Savanna, my own artist. Everyone was just like, oh, that's Lexi's sister type of thing. And so that day I knew, and I was just like kind of nervous to perform at all, even though no one else knew what was going on. And then my first show that I booked was at this like coffee shop across the street from our school that everyone usually performs at, and it was maybe exactly a couple weeks before COVID happened. So it was right before. It was in February or March. And yeah, I mean, I was scared. I was one of those weirdos that like put flyers up around my school. And I was like, come to my show, because like no one was going to come. In my mind, I was like, I've never performed by myself. Like, why would anyone come? I don't have any music, like anything. So I got like a bunch of my friends, some people from Florida that I'm close to flew up for me and like came. And then some people from school. So it was nice. I mean, it was like scary and uncomfortable, but I felt like I was able to like just to pull it off, and that's all I wanted to prove to myself was that like in a small time, like I can get some songs together. I'd written like 3 or 4 songs in that past month, like literally within the time, just so I could have them to sing, and then just sang some covers that I felt like showcase like what kind of music I wanted to do. And it was definitely like more of a pop show, and that was like when I knew I was like I want to do pop music. Like I never felt country was where I was like genuine and most authentically myself. I feel like I did it because it was, I love country and I grew up listening to it, but I also know that that's not where my voice sits or where I feel the most me. So yeah, I think it was just the Nashville thing. When you get up there, you're like, oh, country pop, because like we grew up on country, but like also we love pop, so let's do both. And now I'm just solely pop, and that was the first show I'd ever played where I just did pop stuff.
And so once you had gotten off that stage and completed the show, did you kind of have some newfound confidence, like this is something I could do like multiple times in the future? Because it is such like a main part of being an artist, like playing live shows. So once you got that first one down, did you kind of feel like it was something you could do again, or did it take a few more tries to finally feel comfortable enough that performing live is something that you could do?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like my whole life I've had stage fright since I was a kid, because I've been performing for so long. Like even in Florida, I would perform in like competitions and like things around Tampa. There's not a lot of like, much of a music scene where I'm from. There's just like cover bands and things like that. So I would join like local competitions, and like when my sister and I were in a duo for 2 years, we were singing out all the time. We went on like a small tour, like we did that whole thing. So I'm used to like performing, but I was not used to performing by myself at all. I was very scared actually, and I've always kind of had stage fright, like I mentioned. But even before, as a kid, I was in a quartet with me, my sister, and these 2 girls that we were really close to that were also sisters. So it was like 2 sister groups. We all sang together, put our own harmonies together, and that made me feel more comfortable, because like the more people on the stage, the less scared I was. And so yeah, I think, I don't know, when I got off, I was just like, I can do this, definitely. I knew I could do it, but I wanted to do it better than I had done it, because I knew that when I was up there, I definitely messed up a lot more than I did when I was performing in my room, obviously. And I felt just like I didn't give everything I had to the performance, but it's because I was in my head a lot of the performance. And I think it's something that I always struggle with, is just like stage anxiety. I've had it for forever. It's definitely something that gets better the more you perform, and like how if you're performing continuously, it gets a lot easier. But when I'm taking months off, like for example, I haven't performed since probably I don't even know what month it is right now. Is it July? I think like May. And by the time I get back to Nashville, it'll be like probably August 1st. So my first show back, I'm gonna be scared. Like I just know that. But I think there is a new confidence that I have now that I didn't have then, and that's just that like this music I have out that I'm singing out, I'm proud of it. Like it feels like me, and like I've sang it out millions of times at like writers rounds and things like that now. So I'm still nervous every time I step on stage, but I'm a lot more confident in like what I'm doing up there and like the type of things that I'm singing for sure.
Yeah, and it's like that confidence in yourself, or like not wanting to quit anything. Was there any one person that kind of instilled that in you, or did you just kind of find that you like got that on your own?
Yeah, I think my parents are entrepreneurs, both of them. My dad did not go to school, and then he like it was like a whole thing when he was younger, but he ended up getting pulled out of high school at like 16, and then he just like started working, and then he ended up getting his GED like around like when he was like 21 or something like that, and then he just like worked random jobs for a long time in sales. So he was in sales for a long time, and then I think my mom and him met when he was like she was like his boss, so she like was the one leading the company, and he just like worked for her. And then eventually, after they got married, they opened their own mortgage business. And then at that time, my dad was also doing music in Nashville, so he's traveling while owning that business back in Florida. So I don't know. My dad's just been one of those people forever that's like he believes in something and he wants to do something, he does it type of thing. And I think there's a lot of obstacles that come with doing a non-set traditional path, especially like a musician. It's just like there's not really a map for you to get to your end goal. It's literally just like throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what works and just like moving off of that. And that's just how music honestly feels a lot of the time. It's just unstable and scary, especially at the level of like an artist that a lot of us are at, where we're just like trying to figure it out. We don't have a steady income coming through. And like, I don't know, my dad just always was like, if I want to do music, like even if I have all this other stuff, like standing him away, like he was in his 30s at the time, which in country music as a man isn't really that big of a deal, but still like, especially at that time, there was just so many of them coming up out of every place ever. And he was also like had kids and was doing all of these things. And then when he came back to Florida after being a musician in Nashville, he had a band in Florida for 10 years. And then he worked 3 jobs and then got a financial advisor's degree. And then now he owns his own financial advising business. So he's just one of those people who's like done everything that he wants to and like always finds a way to make it work and like support my dreams and my sister and my mom and like all these things. So I don't know, I feel like he definitely instilled like just the idea of like, if you want something, you can make it happen idea, and just like being confident and knowing what you want to do. And my mom also is like very smart and just like went back to school to be like an RN and get her ultrasound degree at like 43, which like most people in her class were like early 20s. Like her GPA had to be like above 4.0 to get into the program. Like she just is like one of those like people who can do anything she sets her mind to as well. And she's also works at my dad's company. It's like their company. So I don't know, they've just both been super entrepreneurial people my whole life, and not done anything super traditional. And so I think it just made me feel like I can definitely make things happen if I work hard enough. Because they definitely worked so hard. It just like was in a way that people probably wouldn't have suggested. And then eventually it worked out. So yeah.
Yeah. And so when you kind of try like sit down and have the thought of making a new song, like when you're set out to try to do that, do you kind of have a certain creative process that you try to follow, or do songs just kind of end up taking shape however they come about for you?
Yeah, I think when I'm writing alone, it's different than when I'm writing in a group. I think when I'm writing by myself, I try to just like I don't know. I think I might need to change some of this up. Like recently, I've just been kind of blocked the past like month. But recently, mostly how I do it is I just grab like my piano or my guitar and I just sit there and I just like start either I get like inspired by something I saw or like a video or a song that I heard, and I'll just try to kind of write down and put down like chords that I like, and then I'll just literally like freestyle sing over what I'm doing until I like something, and then I just start usually writing it from there, and I usually start with the verses and then lead into like the rest of the song. I used to be only able to write like a chorus hook and then I would just not have anything else. And now I feel like it's the opposite. Now I feel like I can write verses and I can't write a chorus. So just like I try to just sit there and allow myself to be making mistakes. I think when you're too hard on yourself when you're writing, you're like, oh my god, that's stupid. You're just gonna like mess up any creativity that you have coming through. So I just try to like write down whatever I'm thinking. If I'm not able to be near a piano or a guitar and I'm out somewhere and I get an idea, I'll just like put in a voice memo on my phone or I'll write down whatever the idea was in my notes and just kind of go from there when I get back to my room. I tend to write alone in the middle of the like night at like 2 a.m. That's like my creative time. I don't know why. It's always been like that since COVID. It's just like from 12 a.m. to 2 is like the time where I feel creative. So yeah, I feel like that's my process alone, just like writing down what comes to my mind and just singing things and trying things. And then normally in a co-write situation, I try to come in with an idea and then we just like write the rest of it together and build off of like something I've already started. I like to come in with an idea always because I feel like when I try starting from scratch in a room with other people, I lose the, I guess the strength to just be like, this is my idea and this is what I want to do and this is, I'm very bad about doing that in a group setting. I think I get like in my head, I get nervous to say anything and then the song never turns out the way that I want it to. And that's something I've definitely had to work on because I wasn't in co-writes for a long time. I barely even was writing for a long time. So I've just grown into like working with people I really trust and like respect, and it's been easier, but it's still hard for me to like speak up in a room. So it's something I'm working on. But yeah, I try to always have an idea coming into it, and that's when I usually find my voice is like found within the song quicker if we already have something to start off of.
And I've heard that that's kind of like a common thing, or I've talked to people where I like ask them about their creative process, and a lot of them say that it's like at night, like at just like at random points in general. And like I heard someone, they were talking and they were like, yeah, I always keep like my phone or like a notebook by the bed so that way, like if I wake up in the night, I just not even the full idea, I just write down like keywords to remember the idea and go back to bed. And I think there is definitely something weird about like just kind of when you let the mind kind of rest or like not focus on anything, you definitely get inspired or get ideas for things.
Right.
And so, I heard that you try to sit down and write something at least every single day. Do you ever find that there are days where you just kind of are at a lull or like can't think of anything?
Yeah, all the time. I think like I don't know, it's not normal, I feel like, for an artist to be able to write something great every day. Like, that's just, I've never heard of that happening. I'm sure maybe some artist thinks that does happen, but I've not ever seen it happen. I always come up with, like, random ideas sometimes that I'm just like, this is bad. And, like, I don't know. I've gone to the point where I know, like, if it's going to be a good or bad writing day when I'm writing, I can tell, and I'm not going to, like, push myself too hard. I think I used to be like, oh my God, you have to come up with something, like, okay today. And, like, if I can't, at least I, like, tried and I wrote something down, and, like, honestly, the bad songs always end up leading into like a good moment or a good thought later. So I just try to like embrace the bad moments for what they are and just let them be and not over stress myself about coming up with something amazing every single day. It's just not going to happen. And yeah, I try not to put too much pressure on myself because I think that's when you lead yourself into like a block for sure. And I've been blocked many times, honestly, like for months at a time sometimes, and it's really, and I still write through them, but I can tell it's just not feeling like me. Or sometimes I'll write like an amazing, something I'm so proud of. Like the other day I came up with this idea and I wrote it out all in one night in like an hour, and I was so proud of it. And I have like a songwriting coach that I work with, and I showed it to her and she's like, oh my gosh, this is so good, you should like cut this one. And like I was so proud of it. And then ever since that song I have not written anything good, and it's been like 2 weeks. So I think sometimes you just like have a really great idea and then your mind just like is like, okay, you had that, like that's it for a while, and then you're like, like why? Like you're just like triggered.
That you can fall back on, like, oh, I didn't write anything good today, but at least I have this thing that I wrote. And so, and when you release a song, whether it was like you thought it'd be good or you thought it'd be bad, has a song ever like not performed the way you thought it would? Like maybe you were excited about a song and it didn't really gain the traction you thought it would, or the flip side, like you were kind of unsure about the song, but like put it out anyways, and it ended up doing much better than you thought it would.
Yeah, I think No Words is one of those songs I didn't expect to do well. I just had written it, like I said, for that class, and like in my mind, especially at that time, it was like one of the first songs I'd written in years, and so like I completely downplayed the song in my head, and I was like, this is just like very basic and boring, and
Yeah.
no one's gonna like this, and I was like, but I'm gonna put it out because I just need to start putting music out, and I think that's like a mistake a lot of people make is like waiting until everything is perfect, and then they go years making all this music and never put it out. Like you have to just start putting it out. Like you can't be overly perfectionistic about every song because now in my mind I just see like songs I put out years ago as like moments in time that like capture who I was then, and like it's okay. It doesn't have to be exactly representative of who I am right now. Like it's just not realistic. And so yeah, I put that out, and I just thought people would like it, whatever. But it ended up being like my first song to pass like 50,000 streams, and it was like my first song, and so like it was special to me in that way. But also like I think people resonated with like the emotion behind the song, because like at the time I wrote it, like I completely was writing it from my perspective of like things I was dealing with, and I had a really tough year that year. It was my freshman year of college, and I was not doing good. And that song was like capturing, I guess, that feeling that I had going on at the time. So I think people resonated with just like the emotion in the song, but rather than me overthinking how great lyrically it was, I just feel like what came out of it was the emotion, and that's what like I wanted to portray. So that song was one of the ones I was like kind of still to this day, like I think it's my most listened to on like Apple, and I'm like, why? I don't know. I just, after everything I've put out, I'm still like, I don't know, but whatever. I'm happy about it. And then yeah, a song I thought would probably do better was probably my song My Fault, because it's like, to me, it was one of my favorites that I've ever written, but also it just ended up like, it didn't do like terribly, but it was like the least listened to off my EP. So I was like, I guess people didn't like it the same way that I did, and that happens too. Like sometimes you're more passionate about a song and your audience doesn't connect to it as well. But also at the time that I put out my EP, like I didn't have nearly the same marketing strategies that I do now. Like I barely marketed it myself. And I never did like a lot of social media posting for it. I didn't really know how to do that. I didn't have a content schedule. I didn't have a manager. I just was literally throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what works. So yeah, I don't know if I ever really gave that song a fair chance to be heard, I guess is the right way to say it. I never really put a lot of promotion behind it. So yeah, I think even now, I could probably start repurposing that song and posting it now, and just being like, because a song's never too old to post about. Like some songs blow up like 3 years after the fact. So I definitely could post it. I just haven't really, because I have so much music coming out right now that I'm like overwhelmed with the new stuff. But it's something I'm considering in the future. It's just like reposting my EP music, because at the time I really didn't have the same thing going on that I do now.
Yeah, and I think you kind of mentioned it with no words. The way I see it is like, I feel like sometimes if you sit on a song for too long, or wait a long time to release it, the longer you kind of spend with it. There are some songs that you just like the whole way through, but some, like, it's almost like you feel like you've had so much time with it, and it starts to like feel like it's getting old, and you like kind of lose your love for it, and then put it out and realize that it is actually still a good song. But yeah.
The Love Bracelet is the perfect gift for you and your partner. The Love Bracelet prides themselves on handmade matching bracelets. Each bracelet that they make is named after a city in the Amalfi Coast in Italy. If bracelets aren't your thing, that's fine. They have sweatshirts and other products as well. The Love Bracelet is a business dedicated to raising awareness for domestic violence. Use code HeroekYT for 35% off and free US shipping. They do also ship worldwide. Find them at Official Love Bracelet on Instagram. And again, that is code HeroekYT, all lowercase, for 35% off your order and free US shipping.
You mentioned where your inspiration comes from. You try to think of like things you've seen or anything. Do you ever try to like use inspiration in the form of like listening to other artists or like different music that you like and trying to like find ideas in that?
Yeah, I think my biggest forms of inspiration come from like my favorite artists and just like the sounds that they use, or like the way they like use different melody ideas and things like that. And then like a lot of the actual like meaning of the lyrics usually comes from my own like personal stuff. I've been trying to step into a zone recently where I'm writing more about like either things that aren't directly related to me or things that are, because I used to just feel like it was comfortable for me to write about like heartbreak, and that's something that everyone can write about. I feel like it's like the common thing that's easy for people to write about. For me, it was the easy thing, and then I was struggling to find like ways to write about myself or write about things that I like felt or things I saw about other people or stories that other people had. So I think that's like more so what the newer music for next year is kind of turning into, is like more directly about me, which is something I'm excited about. But yeah, I think my favorite artists are the ones that I've inspired a lot in my EP last year, and also just like this year, I've like discovered a lot more artists that I like in the singer-songwriter pop world. Because when I got into that world, I was like, well, what kind of music do I like? What is my music going to look like? So let me find some artists that I look up to and I like their stuff, so I can kind of like, when I go into a session, be like, hey, to the producer, this is like the kind of vibe I'm going for. Because a lot of times, every session, they want a reference of some sort. So that's normally what I try to do, is find references for my songs that I'm trying to create. And that's just kind of how I start off. And then, I make the stories like personal to me in whichever way that is.
And so how do you, are there any ways you kind of find like to try to keep a balance between inspiration without like sounding too much like an artist, or like trying to, like, it seems like you're just copying or taking from that? Like, how do you kind of stop that from happening, or like going too far towards one sound?
Yeah, I feel like I try to just stick to writing acoustically most of the time, and I feel like what that does for me is like, in a track, right, if you pull up a track that you really like and then they just mimic the track like in front of you, and then you write to the track that they just created, it's a lot different than like you sitting in your room with just your own thoughts and by yourself. Like, it's really hard to create someone else's sound when you're not like referencing back to it a million times. Like, if you hear it and you like it, and then you sit down and you're like, what about that did I like? And then you start thinking about your own stuff, then that's like the easiest way to like come up with your own things and your own ideas, and like it'll just like flow from you personally, and you can't really get that from anywhere else. But if you're sitting there like copying the track basically, or trying to copy the concept, it's going to end up somehow being very similar to the other person. I don't know, there's a lot of music like that right now where I'm like on TikTok and I'm scrolling and I'm like, these girls or these guys sound exactly like this artist, because they're just trying to mimic like whatever is popular at the time. And I don't want to ever be that person. I think it's easy to get inspired by people, but I think it's harder for me to copy personally certain people's music or art, like their artistry. I feel like it to me would make me mad if people are doing that to me, so I try not to do that. But there's a lot of music right now that just sounds like all the same, and I feel like it's hard to stand out when you do that. So I try to like think of it as like, I want to make music that is me, that still fits in this like the singer-songwriter pop space, but is me, so that people can recognize who is singing, and they're not like, oh, this is another Lennon Stella or another Gracie Abrams. You know what I mean?
And you kind of mentioned it with No Words. A lot of artists kind of find it like hard or scary to put out songs with such honest and like authentic lyrics, and I think that's what stops a lot of people from like being honest with their own music. When you kind of decide to put that out, what like feelings were you experiencing when you first put it out, and since then, how is releasing such an honest song been?
I think being that like that was my first song I put out, I was uncomfortable and nervous for people to hear it. I don't know. I'm a person that like, I'm not very vulnerable. Like, as a girl, like I feel like a lot of in the way that just like it's not something easy for me to access. It's just like vulnerability and like being emotional and like talking about myself in like a personal way to people, especially if I don't know them. I'm like very private, and so being a musician is really hard to be a private person. Like, it's like a big contradiction. So it's something I've had to like kind of reshape and like work on, like what is my brand and like what do I want to do, and like how do I want my music to reach people if I'm not willing to tell them like personal things about my life. So I think like the best way to describe it is I've just had to come up with the idea of like the best way to get to know me is musically. Like, when it comes to like my social medias, or even if I am doing a type of interview, like I'm honest and I'm being like completely transparent, but also like nobody will ever truly know like the stories behind your music and like what exactly happened. And like that's something that I always will have to like keep for myself, and I'm sure a lot of artists feel that way about like, you can have the story written out in like the song, and people can hear it and they can like make it their own, but like no one's ever going to truly know like the exact situation or the name or the person, you know. So those experiences like are the thing that I have that I'm like, okay, what's this personal? Like, I have that at least. Cause like I said, I'm not good at sharing myself with random people and it's hard for me. So yeah, there's some artists that are just super transparent, emotionally like vulnerable all the time and just kind of lay it all out there in interviews and in everything.
Yeah.
And I'm not like that person ever. So I feel like for me, yeah, I just try to think of like my music and my lyrics is the way people can get to like know who I am and like see the vulnerability that I do have that it's not easy for me to have, but through music it's my one way of like kind of having it as an outlet, and I've always kind of seen it like that. And so when I'm writing a song, I try not to hold back what I actually feel, and then when I put it out there, I try to remember that like people aren't going to sit there and like question and deep thought what I wrote that about for hours on end and like try to dig into my personal life. Like they're honestly just going to listen to it and relate to it and make it feel whatever it's supposed to feel for them. Like make my song something that they can relate to and something that they can, you know, use for their own healing of whatever it is. Yeah, it's just honestly music to provoke thought and like emotion and like have people feel like they have something they can relate to and they're not like alone in that feeling. So yeah, I think it was uncomfortable at first, but I just had to remember that like if I want my music to reach people and I want my music to feel honest, I have to be honest in the music. And like I said, the personal back end experiences of it that I'm so worried about, like, you know, sharing, no one's ever going to really know that stuff. And that's not the important part. It's just the fact of relating to people. And I think when people know the exact story behind a song, it makes it harder for them to make it their own because then they just think of your story. So yeah, I try to remember that and not get so in my head about just being like so private because there's parts of my life that just aren't going to be, and that's okay.
And I think even a personal song, if you make it big enough, kind of like you mentioned, people will just find own experiences or memories of their life to connect it to. They won't necessarily try to dig into why you wrote it or what your experience with that song was.
Right.
So if you kind of got like once in a lifetime chance to like make a song with any artist in the world, who would you kind of want to make a song with?
I feel like there's honestly so many that I like love and like would want to do different types of songs with, if that makes sense. Like different artists for different reasons, different types of vibes of the song. But I feel like that's a good question. Right now, I feel like it always kind of changes. So right now, I would love to do a song with like Khalid, or like I love R&B music as well. Like I grew up listening to like rap and R&B as well because like Florida, you know what I mean? That's just the vibe down here. So yeah, someone like in that space would be really cool. Also just like any pop artist that I really look up to. Like I love Lennon Sala, I love Gracie Abrams. I love their music. I think Benny Blanco is awesome as well. So just like anything in that space would be really cool.
And like maybe you don't have a ton of live experience, but of the live shows you've played, has there been one that you kind of think of as your favorite, or like you just really loved playing, or like had a good feeling about it during like in the middle of it?
Yeah, I think my most recent show at the High Watt in Nashville was like the last time that venue is going to be open because they are closing it. They're shutting down like that whole performance venue, and they're putting up like apartment buildings or something. So that music venue's been there for years, and it's just like really sad. And so that was like one of the last times I was ever going to play there, or like anyone could watch a show there. And I opened for my friend. His name's Jordan, but he goes by Loverboy. He's like a all pop guy in Nashville. And yeah, I played for the opening set, and like it was just him and I show. There wasn't like a company hosting it or anything, and so we sold out most every like the whole part of the venue, and like everyone that came was there for like just him or me. Like there wasn't like any other option, so it felt like special, and it felt like the first time I had seen like people coming to my show, you know, that wasn't like through some type of ticket sales that I had been doing for months, or promotions, or a company helping support with supporting artists, also bringing other people. Like it was strictly just him and I's fan bases in Nashville. And surprisingly, a lot of my listeners aren't in Nashville, which I think is strange. They're actually like everywhere else, like Chicago, LA, like that kind of thing. So it was just surprising the turnout and just the amount of people that came, but also people that did show up were engaged and listening, and like people were excited, and like I got to perform my new song, and then it came out that night and like after my show, and it was just it's like a special performance, I feel like. And I felt like myself up there. I mean, like I said, I've always had stage fright. I've been performing since I was a kid. I've always been scared. So I was definitely nervous before I went on, but it ultimately ended up feeling like special for sure. Yeah.
That's awesome. And so, do you kind of have almost like a bucket list or a to-do list of like venues or arenas that you would just love to play one day, or like dream venues almost that you want to play shows at?
I feel like I do have a good amount of places that I like love to play. I don't know if I have like an exact dream venue, which I think is strange because I feel like everyone does. I'm one of those people who like, even with like my friend that I hang out with all the time is like in like love with cars, and so he has like a dream car. And I'm like, and he's like, "Do you don't have a dream car?" I'm like, "No, like I just have a few cars that I think are cool." So I'm like one of those people who just like takes in a lot of things and like loves a lot of stuff. I don't really know if I have like one main thing, but I do feel like a big dream is just to play like a music festival outside. Like that's a big goal of mine, is just like a festival performance. I've played at festivals before, but they weren't like anything in like the pop world. They were just like opening for a country festival or like something small like in that setting. Back when I was in a duo, and so I've always wanted to play like Lollapalooza or like Hangout Fest or like one of these like really awesome venues that are outside. And I think being outside and like near the water is just something that I want to do because I'm from Florida and I am like a beach girl, and like I just love being in that setting, and it makes me feel like myself and more grounded when I'm like near the water. So, and in Nashville there is no water, like it's landlocked, so you go to a lake if you want to have some water experiences. And so yeah, just playing like out there and like that kind of vibe would be really cool, or like playing at the arena in my hometown like in Tampa would be cool, or anything like that. But I'm definitely like a festival mindset right now. I want to play a festival like very soon.
And so, have you had any like memorable like fan interactions, or like meeting a fan and in any way like a good experience, bad experience, anything like that?
Yeah, I feel like I've met some people that have come out from like different places to see me perform, and like it was just cool seeing the, like we were talking about earlier, like the translation from like a social media follower into a fan is really cool. There's people that like follow me on TikTok like early on 2020 that like would end up coming out to like see me play in Nashville, and that was like really special. Or just like meeting people after my show that were like happy with my set and like wanted to like get coffee after, because Nashville's one of those places where like everyone just like hangs out, and it's like a very friendly, group oriented setting, and like I'm not used to that. And when I moved to Nashville, that was a really big switch for me. I was like, I'm used to doing everything on my own and kind of being like dealing with stuff on your own, doing music on your, like everything was on your own. And in Nashville, it's like a really small community, but it's like very community oriented. And so yeah, I think just like getting to meet people that, you know, you also love their music and stuff like that, and they become like fans of your music, and just getting to like kind of be there with each other and watch each other perform in Nashville is just like a supportive thing. And so I feel like, yeah, I've met a lot of people after my shows that I liked, or I liked one of their shows, and then we hung out after and like wrote together. And yeah, I think all that is just super cool and different and unique to like what I'm used to, or like what people in LA are used to doing. It's just like a whole different world. So yeah.
And so whether it's like no words with like the meaning behind it, or anything else, is there like a song that you've released that you kind of have a special connection to, or that you think is your personal favorite?
One I've released, that's a good one. I feel like I have a lot that I've put out that are coming that I'm like more like connected to, I would say, like emotionally. But yeah, I think probably my favorite that I put out as of right now is probably either End from the Beginning, which is my most recent song, or my song Girl Underneath, when I was like wrote that for my EP. I think both of them have completely different like times and vibes going on, but the most recent one I feel like it's just connected with a lot of people, and like that song when we were writing it, like I just knew like I wanted to put it out. It was like super special to me in the moment, and I just love like the way that it sings, and I just like the meaning, and I like how we like flipped the idea to make it more like I don't know, a lot of people write about like red flags and like things in relationships, but they don't like say that they like knew it from the beginning, that you didn't like ultimately break up from those red flags you saw. And like that's something that I feel like no one really like writes about. And so I just wanted to make a song about that because I've experienced it, and I just didn't know how to put it into words. And so like me and the two guys I wrote it with, like I felt like we just captured it like the way that I was feeling in a song very perfectly that day. So I feel like that's one of my favorites, just by seeing how many people are resonating, and like means a lot to people as well as to me. Or yeah, Girl Underneath was just like the first song I'd ever put out that felt the most like me. It was pop. It was my first pop song, really. My No Words was pop too, but it was done by the same producer that I'd worked with in a duo. So it still felt kind of connected to my past. And that was my first song I'd done with Nightly, which is like the band that I work with a lot, and they produce a lot of my stuff for me. And so yeah, it just felt like the first time I kind of stepped out into the pop space and was like, yeah, this is like my vibe. And I was proud of that song. And yeah, it also captured like personal feelings about myself that I was dealing with, like needing to slow down and not work yourself to the ground, and just like take time to focus on what you need and like care about yourself. Because I'm a workaholic and I sometimes like don't take care of myself. So yeah, I think it was a good reminder for like even now for me. So those two songs probably are my favorites I put out.
And you've said that going forward you want to be in like full artist mode, or like full on artist mode. What does that mean to you, and what are your goals going forward?
Full artist mode is just like, I don't know, like there's no 9 to 5 in music. It's 24/7. Like you never stop. And I think part of me loves that, and part of me is like exhausted by that. I'm never craved like a traditional clock in, clock out job. I just haven't. And I think when you work with music, honestly, as an independent, especially, like your music is what you put into it. So if you're working like 1 hour a week, like your career is going to move at 1 hour a week. You know what I mean? So you have to be putting in like everything you can, because I have all this free time. I'm not in school, and I'm trying to like get to a point where I feel like all this time and energy and like leaving school, all of that has ultimately been for a purpose. And I feel like obviously there's a lot of growth and movement that's happened in the past couple of years, and I'm proud of that. But I'm always wanting the best and more in growth, and trying to celebrate my accomplishments and things that I've accomplished now that I wished 2 years ago I could have. But also just not getting comfortable. I never want to be comfortable. So yeah, I'm always just kind of in full artist mode. I'm always working. I'm always, figuring out new things I can do to promote my music. I'm always researching. I love the marketing and the back end stuff of the music industry just as much as I love like the music and the performing and the writing. I never want to like have too much time off. Like even right now I'm off for the summer, just like in Florida, but I'm still have music coming out, and I'm working on content, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I just feel like full artist mode just means literally always music is always happening no matter what, even on vacations, even in a lot of aspects when I'm out with my friends. Like I still, like if my manager calls me, I'm taking the call type of thing. So I am working on boundaries, because I think that's something that's important to not burn out. It's just like having boundaries with your work, and I struggle with that because music is, sometimes it doesn't feel like work because it's something I love so much, but eventually you get burnt out, and it's happened before. So I am working on boundaries in that sense, but I'm just always like looking for the next thing and like worrying about what I got to do, and like making plans and making sessions. And I mean, my music's already for next year kind of already getting planned out, and that's next year, and I already have music coming out all the rest of this year. So I'm always like a year ahead, and I think it just makes me feel more comfortable to be a year ahead, rather than be struggling at the last minute to figure out what I'm doing. So yeah, I feel like that's kind of what I mean by that, probably.
Yeah, it's definitely a good place to be in, is like that you have music ready to be released, rather than kind of like releasing a project, doing all the marketing, and then realizing you don't really have anything left, and like, oh, I can have to start from scratch like my entire next project. And so I think that's definitely a good place to be in. And I'll definitely keep an eye out for some of that music coming out soon. But thank you so much for coming on. I think it was a great time. I think we talked about a lot of good things. Where can people find you online? Instagram, Spotify, everything like that. And if you want to know any music coming out soon, feel free to do that too.
Yeah, I'm Savanna Leigh on everything. So Savanna with no H. Everyone spells it with PH, but there is no H at the end. And then Leigh is Leigh. My mom loves giving me weird spellings to things, I guess. But yeah, I'm Savanna Leigh Official on most things, or Spotify and Apple, it's just Savanna Leigh. And I have music literally coming out until the rest of the year. So a new song every month for the rest of the year. So yeah, it's gonna be really exciting. It's the project is a full project. It's just getting released as singles, but each song is in order of like an album. So they're all like telling a story ultimately at the end.
All right. Well, thank you again for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.